Hello, friends. Dave Roberts here with another episode of Soul Ascension Insights. Our journey to discover our true nature as humans on Earth continues. We're moving on from our study of near-death experiences, and we'll now look at a few scientific experiments that expose our power as conscious beings. With that said, let's get started with episode number 5, titled The Power of Consciousness, Part 1. There is a fascinating documentary on YouTube called Third Eye Spies, which recounts the now declassified remote viewing experiments sponsored by the CIA and conducted by physicists Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff at the Stanford Research Institute in California. People who showed an aptitude for extrasensory perception were recruited and trained to mentally view what was happening at a remote location while only receiving the location as latitude and longitude. This was a highly successful proof-of-concept program that operated from 1972 to 1986 and most certainly continues within branches of our military to this day. At one point, a skeptical CIA officer gave a remote viewer the latitude and longitude for a remote cabin he had recently purchased in the endless hills and hollers of the West Virginia mountains. The remote viewer reported seeing a water tower, administration building, dormitory building, and a railroad line that ran along the edge of the property with a crane to hoist goods off the train. What the viewer saw was a secret CIA base that was just over the hill from the remote cabin in West Virginia, and the CIA was not amused. Check out this excellent documentary for more info. In Third Eye Spies, they don't discuss how it was possible for the viewers to see and report on these locations. I don't know either, but I don't mind going out on a limb and making an assumption. Current scientific theory is that consciousness is a function of the brain. I believe consciousness comes from our soul, and that the knowledge of all the souls who have incarnated on Earth can be accessed. So my explanation is that the remote viewers tapped into what transcendental meditation disciples call the unified field of consciousness. Also, possibly the Akashic records where all past knowledge is stored. So the information came from people who worked at the base. A secondary explanation is astral projection at the speed of thought. An aspect of the viewer's soul, their astral body, instantly traveled to the location and reported what it saw. Or put another way, all points through space and time are connected. If you have a different theory, please let me know in the comments. After his work at SRI, Dr. Targ said, quote, "The evidence of extrasensory perception was overwhelming and shows a talent we all share and deserve to know about," end quote. Another great documentary is Dr. Stephen Greer's Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. In it, they mention 2 experiments conducted by Dr. Robert Jahn, the former Dean of Engineering at Princeton University. In the first experiment, they set up a computerized random number generator which displayed either a 0 or a 1. When left to run on its own, for a specific amount of time, it displayed 50% zeros and 50% ones as expected, like a coin flip. They then brought a human into the experiment with the random number generator and directed the human to focus their intent on 0 for a specific period of time. During this phase of the experiment, the results were 60% zeros and 40% ones, and 70% zeros and 30% ones. They conducted this experiment many times, and almost every time, the introduction of conscious thought influenced the machine outcome. Now let's talk about the second experiment conducted by Dr. John's team at Princeton. Picture a dark, 20-foot by 20-foot room with 10-foot high walls and all the surfaces painted black. Hanging in the center of the ceiling is a small, random computer-generated mechanical searchlight. When left alone, the light moves and randomly points to different areas in the room with no apparent pattern as expected. Once the baseline was established, they bring in a potted plant and place it on the floor in one of the corners in this dark room. When the experiment is restarted over a specific period of time, the searchlight shines on the potted plant more than any other location in the room, indicating that the plant influenced where the light shined. All life is conscious, and this consciousness has the power to influence those systems it interacts with. Dr. Robert Jahn's work with mind-machine interactions and the nature of consciousness was groundbreaking and very controversial. And I'm happy to report his work continues with the nonprofit International Consciousness Research Laboratories at Princeton. Now let's look at the double-slit experiment for another example of the power of consciousness. This experiment starts with a light source directed at a poster board that has two thin parallel slits cut in it. Behind the poster board is a screen catching the light coming through the two slits. The non-observed outcome is that the particles of light show a diffused or scattered pattern of light on the screen. Here's where it gets weird. When a human observes the same experiment, the light pattern shows two distinct lines on the screen. The experiment shows that the act of human observation can change how patterns of light behave. The scientists concluded, quote, "The double-slit experiment challenges our understanding of reality and raises profound questions about the nature of consciousness and our relationship to the world around us. The experiment suggests that our thought and intent has the power to shape our reality," end quote. I have one last example of the power of consciousness or awareness to share with you. Masaru Emoto was a doctor of medicine in Japan who had a lifelong fascination with the properties of water. Dr. Emoto and his team started exposing samples of water to different spoken and written words and music, then freezing these samples and photographing the resulting ice crystals like photos of snowflakes. The photos of water exposed to positive words and uplifting music showed beautifully structured ice crystals. The photos of water exposed to negative words and harsh music showed deformed, featureless, or flattened ice crystals. The most beautifully formed ice crystals were exposed to the words love and gratitude. So this study shows that the structure of water changes when exposed to either a positive or negative input or environment. Since we know that the human body is composed of around 70% water, this study suggests that your body is being physiologically affected by your thought and environment, so it's best to maintain a positive state of mind in positive surroundings. As expected, mainstream scientists are skeptical of these findings, but I encourage you to decide for yourself. Dr. Emoto self-published a short book titled The Hidden Message in Water, which explains his process and includes many amazing photographs. It's an elegant, beautiful book that I highly recommend. Thank you for joining me for part 1 of The Power of Consciousness. In part 2, we'll look at how the power of your conscious awareness has the potential to change the world for the better. As always, I've left a book and media list below for those who wish to explore further. Thanks again, and I'll be back with more episodes.